Hello everyone, welcome back to Brian's Mysteries and Adventures on Trail. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. I hope everyone is doing well. Today's video is one of the darkest times in backpacking camping history that took place in Australia between 1987 and 1992, perhaps even longer. I'm going to get into the details. This is just absolutely unbelievable. It is fairly often known as the Australian backpacker murders. There was even a movie called Wolf Creek made about it in 2005, an Australian horror film. Highly fictionalized and sensationalized like many movies are. Here I'm going to give you the facts of what really happened. All of these backpackers and hikers had started out in Sydney, had stayed in Sydney hostels. They had been planning to travel down the Hume Highway from Sydney to Melbourne. Most of these people had contacted their friends and family and had given them detailed plans. The first to go missing was a young couple, Deborah Phyllis Everest, Australian, and James Harold Gibson, also Australian. They were both 19 at the time. On December 29th of 1989, James and Deborah were last seen near their hostel in the Surrey Hills area of Sydney. They had planned to get out of the city and start hitchhiking on the Hume Highway. They had told friends and family that they were first going to stop in the town of Albury. Here's a map of their intended plan route. The X marks the spot where they were going to stop, then move on to their final destination of Melbourne. They were never seen alive again. Then, in April of 1990, James's camera and backpack were both found in the Gorge area, which is northwest of Sydney. Here is a map of that location. The camera was found by one man. However, at the time when he found the camera, which was on the side of the road and it was damaged, he didn't really think anything of it. He didn't realize it was part of any investigation. So he actually didn't report it to the police until roughly a month later, when the media was circulating around the fact that James's backpack had been found in this area of the gorge. The backpack had been turned over to the police, and it looked like somebody had cut off the name tag and done some other things. So at this point, the guy who found the camera turned it over to the Sydney police, and this is when the official search for the couple got started. The police at this point really had no idea what they were dealing with and thought maybe the couple was just in another area of Australia. Then on January 20th of 1991, a German woman named Simone, who went by Simi, she was 20 years old at the time. She was planning to hitchhike to Melbourne to meet her mother, who was flying in from Germany. They were going to do a camping trip together. This is a picture of Simone Schmidl. She too was planning on hitchhiking the Hume Highway, but before that she needed to get out of Sydney. She was last seen alive at the Sydney railway station, just catching a random train to get out of the main part of the city out to an area where she could start hitchhiking. Simi had planned to meet her mother at the Melbourne airport 2 days later. Her mother arrived as planned 2 days later in Melbourne. However, her daughter was not there at the airport to meet her. At first, she thought maybe she was just running late. She ended up staying in Australia for 6 weeks waiting for Simone, but Simone never showed up. It was like she said she disappeared off the face of the earth. Roughly 5 months after she had disappeared, her sleeping bag and glasses were found in a bushland area near the town of Bright, which is northeast of Melbourne. Here is a map of that location just to give you an idea of how far it is from Sydney and Melbourne. Despite them having found her glasses and sleeping bag, the authorities had no leads. Then a young German couple, Gabor Newbower was 21 years old at the time, and his girlfriend Anja Hapshed was 20 at the time. They were also traveling in the Sydney area. They left the Backpackers Inn at Sydney's King's Crossing on December 26th of 1991. Here's a picture of that hostel that they were staying at. They told friends and family that they were going to hitchhike first south to the town of Adelaide. Then at some point they were going to turn around and head north and head up to Darwin. Eventually they had told people from Darwin before heading home they were going to travel up to Indonesia. No one knows exactly where and when they disappeared. There was some reports that people had seen them a couple days after they had left Sydney in a caravan park in Darwin, where they had told people they had missed a plane. Whether or not this is true or not, we don't know, but they were reported missing and never were seen again. Police at this point knew that there was a serious problem, but they were trying not to create a panic in the public. In fact, there was an order to all police involved in these investigations not to talk to the press. In the spring of 1992, two British women, Caroline Clark from Northumberland and Joanne Walters from South Wales, had come to Australia separately, but had met and became fast friends and decided that they were going to travel together. The two women both wrote back to their families in the UK, telling them of their plans to visit the Northern Territory as well as the Western Desert in Australia. They said that they would be in touch. Caroline was 21, only a year younger than Joanne. They just had a lot in common and they wanted to visit a lot of the same places. On April 16th of 1992, they left the King's Cross area of Sydney. Heading south to Victoria, they wanted to stop and earn money by picking fruit. Then they had planned to go to the Hume Highway where they were going to hitchhike. There were witnesses that said they saw the two women asking for directions on how to get to the Hume Highway. They had apparently managed to hitchhike quite some ways down the Hume Highway. They were last seen on April 26th of 1992, where they were seen camping in the Box Vale Trail walking picnic area with a man that was characterized as in his mid to late 40s. These disappearances had been making their way into the media, but it wasn't until September 19th of 1992 when two runners that were taking part of some event, they came upon what they believed was human remains in the Belanglo State Forest in New South Wales. The police immediately descended into the state forest. The following day, they found a second body. Both of them were sent to the medical examiner's office. They were confirmed to be that of Caroline Clark and Joanne Walters. They had both been killed in a brutal way, which I can't go into, but shot and stabbed, and they were left in an area of the forest which was near a lot of the fire trails. Here's a picture of the massive search that the police sent in to try and look for more evidence, possibly the perpetrator. Despite this huge search of this whole forest, they found no further evidence and no other bodies. The police, in the public's eyes, seemed to lose focus on this case and weren't really putting in what they thought deserved more attention. So this man by the name of Bruce Pryor, in October of 1993, roughly a year later, he was constantly searching the forest, and right in this area, he found more remains. The police quickly came in again. When they started their search, they found two more bodies that were located in a very dense, remote area of the forest. They were quickly identified to be Deborah Everest and James Gibson, and they had been killed in the same awful way that Caroline Clark and Joanne Walters had been, in some ways even worse. They weren't sure at the time why the camera and backpack had been found 120 kilometers or 75 miles to the north. This discovery sent shockwaves of fear through everybody, the police, the community, the visitors. Then on November 1st, 1993, a skull was found in a clearing in the forest by Sergeant Jeff Trichner. This was later identified to be that of Simone Schmidl. The sergeant was a little confused because the clothing found at the scene did not belong to Simone. However, it did match another one of the missing backpackers, Anja Hapshed. The police then put together massive search teams, and sadly on November 3rd of 1993, both Anja and her boyfriend, Mr. Newbower, were found in shallow graves, roughly 50 feet apart. The police knew right away it was the same assailant because they had all been killed in the same way, just horrible. They all had been posed in a way where their hands were behind their backs and they were covered with sticks and grass and ferns. They were also all found near campfire rings made of stones, suggesting that the killer had actually camped there after this. The shell casings were all the same caliber. There was always beer bottles and cigarette butts trashed all around the site. The police were stumped at first because some of the victims had been a couple, some of them had been a man and a woman. Simone was just traveling by herself. One of the guys was actually a soldier. They didn't understand how this guy would have managed to overpower them. They came up with the theory of it being possibly two people, possibly a brother and sister, or two brothers. They did develop a profile, but it was a list of around 230 people. They eventually made it a profile list shorter to around 30. Then on November 13th of 1993, the New South Wales police got a call from this guy named Paul Onions. He told them that he was 23. He left his engineering job in England to backpack around Australia 3 years earlier. Paul said that on January 25th of 1990, he took a train to the Hume Highway to try to get to Victoria to earn some money picking fruit. While he was walking down this road, he came across this roadside cafe. He said as he was leaving, this very friendly, smiling Australian man with a mustache walked over him and said, "Where are you heading? Do you need a ride?" The man told Paul his name was Bill. Paul seemed that the guy was friendly enough, so he said he got in his car. He was talking to him about his family, his plans in Australia. They chatted about the kinds of work they both did. Paul said that, but when it was Bill's turn to answer, he said, quote, he was quite cagey about his job, and all he would tell me was that he spent a lot of time on the road. At some point, Bill stopped his truck close to the entrance to Belanglo State Forest. He got out. He told Paul that he was looking for some music cassettes under the seat. Paul at this point was starting to get suspicious, so he followed him out of the vehicle using the excuse that he needed to stretch his legs. They both then got back into the car. At this point, Bill pulled out a revolver and pointed the gun at Paul and then reached under the seat again and pulled out a bag containing rope. At that point, Paul took off his seatbelt, jumped out of the back of the truck, and just ran for his life, saying that this guy Bill was shooting at him. Bill had also jumped out of his vehicle, and unfortunately, he was able to catch up with Paul and tackled him. This is a picture of Mr. Onions when he was on 60 Minutes in 1996. He said, quote, "When I see the rope, that just scared me more than the gun. As soon as I saw the rope, I thought that that's going to take a bit of time and he's going to do whatever he wants. I just thought, this is it, run or die." Miraculously, Paul managed to get up, make another run for it into this path of an oncoming car driven by this woman named Joanne Berry, who was with her sister and 5 children, which thankfully she stopped. He jumped into the back seat. They drove off. Paul remembered looking back and seeing Bill standing with this funny looking grin on his face that he just couldn't get out of his head for the longest time because it was so creepy. Joanne drove Paul to the Bowral police station where they gave a detailed description about what happened, the attacker's appearance, the type of car he drove. Despite this, they just brushed him off, gave him $10 to go back to the town he was staying in, and that report was filed in a drawer for several years. Paul had kept up with the news, though. He had seen all these disappearances of the hikers and what had happened, so he called the Australian police in December of 1993 from England to remind them of his story of this assault by this guy named Bill. Even then, they didn't take it seriously or investigate it. That was until April 13th of 1994, when a detective named Gordon found this note regarding Paul Onion's call to the hotline 5 months earlier. The superintendent, Clive Small, immediately contacted the Borough Police Department for that original report, but of course it was missing from their files. Thankfully, this constable named Janet Nicholson had taken detailed notes and written it down in her own notebook. Thankfully, based on these reports and all their investigation work, the police finally had zeroed in on one man, this man named Yvonne Millat. Yvonne Robert Marco Millat was from New South Wales. He was the fifth of 14 children. He worked as a road worker. Police knew that he had served time in prison, and in 1971 he had been charged with abduction and also serious assault charges. He was known to police throughout the early 70s for picking up hitchhikers, especially females, usually on highways like the Hume Highway or train stations, where then he would pull a knife or some other kind of threatening weapon and threaten them or do other terrible things. Even in prison, he was known to be violent. When he was out of prison in 1974, he would often evade and flee to try and avoid arrest. He was known to be gun crazy, and all the women in his life were scared of him. Finally, on May 22nd of 1994, Yvonne Robert Marco Millat was finally arrested at his home in Eaglevale. Apparently, the home belonged to his brothers Richard, Alex, Boris, Walter, and Bill. This was a massive raid of his house. There was a huge cache of weapons, including the right caliber rifle, camping supplies, clothing, camera equipment belonging to all of the different victims. All were found in his house. The vehicle was sitting in the parking. He had so many charges that he had to face first that his trial for the 7 backpacker murders didn't start until March of 1996. It lasted almost 4 months. His defense tried to argue that despite the evidence, there was no real proof. He was very arrogant and rude in court. He would often laugh. He even tried blaming his family members. He denied all knowledge of any of this. The court on July 27th of 1996 found Millat guilty of all the murders. He was also convicted of attempted murder, false imprisonment, and robbery of Paul Onions, which of course he continually denied. Detectives would visit him over the years trying to get confessions for anything, but he kept everything secret. He never let anything out. Police believe that he may have been involved in dozens of more murders than just the ones he was convicted of. He was nicknamed Ivan the Terrible. He died in the Long Bay Jail's hospital wing in New South Wales from terminal cancer on Sunday, October 27th of 2019. The police believe that's just the tip of the iceberg, what he was actually convicted for, and many of his family members were convicted of horrible crimes too. Thankfully, people put up this beautiful memorial to remember the 7 backpackers and people that this man so brutally took from this world. I want to dedicate this video to all 7 of those backpackers, their friends, their families, all their loved ones. I'm so sorry for your loss. I hope that with the amount of time that's passed, you've been able to find peace and closure, but I know wounds like this never really heal. My thoughts and prayers go out to all of you. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for all your support, your comments, your feedback. Special thank you to co.ag for providing the background music. Hopefully I will see you all in the next one. Take care. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with me to the end. If you haven't subscribed, I'd ask you to please consider subscribing. It's free. It really helps out the channel a lot, as well as my search and rescue efforts. Thank you so much for all your support. If you're able to donate, all my information is in the description, as well as all the sources, photo credits, more information on this video, as well as all my other videos. You can always find more information in the description. I'm working on several new videos and will be keeping to the regular upload schedule. If you have any case or video suggestions, please leave me a comment or email me. Please leave comments. I love hearing from you guys. I'd love to hear about any of your upcoming adventures or vacation plans and the outdoors. All right, everyone, be safe out there. See you in the next one.